Thank you very much. Some of you might be wondering, what are we all about? And what are this event all about? And for that, we have prepared a short little video. I'm going to stop the music as well. Just to describe who we are and what we are all about. And it's going to play it now.
Hello there. We are so happy to welcome you to the AI Think Tank. You might be wondering what this event is all about. Well, we want you, business leaders, tech enthusiasts, and the curious to learn about AI. The AI Think Tank is a collaboration between a team of AI business consultant students from Hyper Island together with AI Sweden. Our mission is to connect people, spread awareness of AI, how it can help your businesses, and spark your interest. We invite AI leaders to share their knowledge and bring inspiration about different topics and applications of AI. For an hour, you will be able to connect by creating this event, meet new people who share the same interest and curiosity, discuss by creating discussion rooms where you can share your thoughts, ideas, and potential use cases, innovate by learning from our invited AI leaders and the tools that will be shared. You will become AI aware and potentially get new ideas to solve your business challenges. Let's get started.
Awesome. So now that you know a little bit more about our purpose and the value we want you to have from this event, we'd like to have a waterfall check-in together with you, just to see just the general feel of the room. Our check-in question is this. So the topic of today is AI use cases, and there are a lot of them. We'd like to know, what type of AI have you used today, or do you usually use? And you can write that in the chat on my mark. Please wait 1 second, just to give everyone a chance to write. Now, wow. Google routes and maps, text recognition, predictive text, conversational AI. Wow, a lot of different use cases. Image recognition, that's a good one. Awesome. Now let's move on to today's agenda. We just went through the presentation, and shortly I will present our expert speaker, Robert Nyquist. Afterwards, we will break out and have a smaller room discussion in breakout rooms. And for the last couple of minutes, we will return to the big room to share some perspectives, some insights and learnings. Afterwards, we will close, and we have a hard stop at 2 o'clock. So our expert for today is Robert Nyquist, who is a ML engineer and head of sustainability at Smarter. He's also a mentor in the Women in AI Mentorship program and has a vast experience in the field of AI. Take it away, Robert.
Yes, thank you for that presentation, and thank you for having me.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
Stop your screen sharing and take over. And give me 1 sec. Now you should have everything in order.
Yes.
So yeah, today AI use cases and some case studies as well. And I saw a lot of different examples in the chat, and a bit luckily, no one wrote any of the cases that I'm going to show you that was related to that. So hopefully we'll get some people get some new inspiration of how you can use AI and different AI models. But firstly, just some extra about me. As you said, I'm a machine learning engineer. consultant, and I've been a consultant for 5 years approximately now. And I work with AI within sports, automotive, finance, insurance, and other fields. And also, as was mentioned, active in Women in AI as mentor, also active in something called Skiers Left that work with avalanche awareness, and that is among other things. And as you can see, I've been involved in quite a lot of different fields, and wherever I go, there is potential to use AI and machine learning. And a lot of times there are also, you see the potential to use kind of the same thing, regardless of area. You can use the same algorithms and the same thinking and just have to apply a bit of expert knowledge. So what I will show today, the case studies, even though they are applied to a specific thing that we're a specific problem we're trying to solve, they can be applied to a lot of more places than I can possibly even mention. But first of all, we're gonna talk a bit about how to find use cases for AI, and also how to not find use cases, because I think that is even more important. So first I just want to say one big thing that I think people don't always think about when talking about AI, that AI is no different than when creating other solutions. So just because AI is a very powerful tool, you should still think about how you create solutions in the same way you create other solutions to problem in a business or something. AI is not special in that way. You should still think of the same problem, and you should still be problem and people focused when creating AI solutions, and we will come back to that a bit as well. And also why I think it's very important to talk about that you are not supposed to use AI just for the sake of it, that you really need to find good use cases. In 2019, there was a study that showed that 40% of the AI startups in Europe don't use AI. And the reason they say that they use AI, that they are an AI startup, is because they get a much higher valuation as soon as they say that they have AI. And I think that is a reason why companies try to find bad use cases for AI, because they just want to have AI, because then their company will get a higher evaluation. So there's just two things to have in mind, like that AI has such a big hype that we sometimes tend to get a bit confused on how we use it in a good way. So what can we do to find good use cases? So first of all, focus on existing problems. Don't come up with non-existing problems just to have AI. Raise employee knowledge, and I'm not talking about having everybody become an AI expert, but if you have people that has somewhat knowledge of how you can use AI and what AI can do for them, then they can also start to see, oh, how it could be helpful in their daily work. Because if you are in a semi-big or big company, no one can have full understanding of everybody's assignments, and therefore an AI expert cannot always see all the places where AI actually can be a solution to an existing problem. But if everybody at the company has some sort of level of knowledge of AI, then they can come up with more solutions that they then can pitch to AI expert, and then have a discussion about how, okay, is this feasible or not? And what I think probably is the most important, is it ethically sustainable? And the previous think tag by Jess Shanahan, I think I pronounced that correctly, has a great talk about the ethics and bias within AI. And this is super important and something I focus a lot around when discussing different type of AI solutions. And what not to do, the most important one. Do not create AI solutions because you want AI. I said that from my first day as a consultant, and I thought that I would have to stop saying it, but still say it on a quite frequent basis. We in Sweden have the Swedish slang word "villhöver," when you want something so bad that you argue that you need it, even though you actually don't need it. I, as an outdoor person, tend to want to buy new gear for being in the outdoors, hiking or something. And I want it so bad that I start to argue why I need it, even though I don't at all. And it's the same with AI. If you have to argue that you need it very hard, then you probably don't need it. So there are some questions to ask to start to find good use cases. So first of all, what problems do we have as a company? Or what problems do specific people have in their daily work, tasks that they do at work? And of course, you cannot start to create good AI solutions and machine learning solutions if you don't have any data. So also, what data do we have, and can we use it? Due to GDPR nowadays, you're not even. It's not possible that you're allowed to use all the data that you want to use. What skills do we have at the company? And can we maintain an AI solution? And if we can't maintain it as we want it, can we make it simpler so it's easier to maintain? And lastly, how do a solution affect the end users? And this is very important, because you create something, you create a solution to make a change, but then you need to understand, okay, how will that affect the people that will use it? And this can be a bit hard maybe to think about, okay, how can you do this in an organized way? At Smarter, we do this with something called Data Bakery that we have played with AI Sweden a couple of times before, where it's a workshop game, kind of, where we try to talk about this stuff to then come up with proper use cases for AI in a structured way. Because it's easy to just sit here and say that, okay, this is the questions that you should ask to find good use cases, but it's harder to actually do it in a structured way. And there's a workshop, a structured workshop could be one way to do this, to find good use cases. But this also comes, of course, with experience. The more you develop solutions, the better you get at seeing when it's feasible and when it's not. So that's a bit sure about how to find use cases. Now I'm gonna go through three different use cases. So I'm gonna go through two forecasting, one for customer support and one for logistics, and then one in predictive maintenance about trucks. And as I said before, even though these are for specific use cases, the structure and the way the algorithms that are used here is applicable in so many different areas. And hopefully by seeing how we have been using forecasting in customer support and logistics, or predictive maintenance on trucks, you can maybe come up with other ideas. Okay, how could we use this maybe at your work, or you can see in your daily life how these types of models are used as well. So first of all, customer support. So I'm going to go through how this company worked with scheduling how many people were working in customer support on a daily basis. So the company has 3 different ways to get errands from customers: incoming mails, incoming messages, and incoming phone calls. And then they have a group of people in every one of them that handles incoming mails, one group for handling messages, and one for phone calls. And each group have their daily goals on how many errands that get answered and how fast all errands should get answered. And then they have different time between the groups because it's different type of errands. So the important thing just to take away here is like they actually have goals. So there is some way to measure how good they are performing, and maybe also how good planning have been done. If you plan 2 little employees to work with mails, then you will not be able to reach the daily goals. So it worked before is that you had one person that was doing the planning, a bit by looking at history and a bit by gut feeling, which creates a lot of issues. So first of all, it's very time consuming for one person to go through all data. And there is also a limit on how much data a person can handle. So one person cannot sit and go through 2 years of history of data and then try to somewhat summarize that into how many people should work with it in group tomorrow. And also people are always biased. You can think here that you cannot really be biased at anything here, but a bad morning or that you're hungry or whatever can and will affect your decisions. So you will not be consistent. If you ask that person to do the planning in the morning and then do the same planning in the afternoon and then do the same planning tomorrow, there is a high chance that it will be 3 different answers, because our mood is affecting how we do things. So to make this easier for them, we decided to create a forecasting model, or more specifically 3 forecasting models. So by looking at history for how many mails, history on how many messages, and how many phone calls, we trained 3 different models that can then forecast how many errands will there be in each category for as long as a time period as we want. So by creating one forecasting model for each group of errands, we then can see how many errands we should plan for. And to make it even a bit easier for the one planning, we also actually created 3 models that translate to number of employees. So by looking at how many errands in each group and how many people that was planned in each group and how well they reached their goal, we could train models to translate the amount of errands to an amount of people that needs to work with for the time period. So there's 2 steps in this one, which then you combine to create a whole system for the company to use. So giving dates, you have that as inputs to the trained forecasting models. The trained forecasting model says how many errands for each group. That is passed to translation models that translates the amount of people, and then all of this gets into a system with incoming errands and number of employees needed. So now we have gone through to make a whole chain of going from just saying, okay, which date do I want to know how I should plan my personnel and the customer support, to have an answer or semi-answer to that question. So by going from one person looking at an old Excel, doing some thinking, doing some gut feeling, fill in a new Excel, and then send it out to employees, we moved that to a person just saying, okay, I want to know for the upcoming 3 days, how should I plan the staff? So the result of this was we freed up a lot of time for the person taking care of the planning, a lot less stress for the customer support. They reached their daily goal more often. And also by going from Excel to a system of with database and so on, we actually have the history properly saved. So you can go back and see how was the planning instead of having 16 different Excel and you don't know what the truth was. So this was customer support. Now I'm going to show kind of the same thing, but within logistics. It's based on the very much the same methods. So for this one, we had a company that worked with being a middle storage for when sending packages. So basically, whatever company that works with delivering packages could stop at their storage on offload, and then another truck from that company can come and load and take it to the end customer. So this didn't have to be their trucks. It could be whatever company they are handling a middle storage. So the problem here is that you have an uncertainty of incoming amount of packages because there are delays when driving. If you drive throughout the whole of Europe, many different ways can be that they are delayed. You also don't know if the trucks that will pick up packages will come in time as well. And here you have, they used hourly personnel from external companies. So each extra person that they had that they didn't need cost quite a lot of money for the company as well. And they also got fines if packages was not handled on time. So if the truck had to wait to be offloaded or wait to be loaded, then they got a fine for it. So they need to minimize the amount of people working, but they also can't have delays on handling packages. And the third part of this is that you have 3 different types of packages that require special treatment. So they have frozen goods, chemicals, normal doesn't need special treatment, but frozen goods and chemicals, and only personnel that have been has education in handling those types of packages are allowed to handle them. So that also makes the planning much harder. So the way they did it from the beginning was they had a baseline of 2,000 packages. That's what they used every day, except for some special days, holidays, for example. And then they had a ratio between the different types of packages. And each Friday, that person checked, okay, do we need to change the baseline? No, okay. Then we have the same amount of people as we did last week. So very little changes. So here we used a lot of forecasting models, and it's the same type of forecasting models that was used in the customer service. It's the same algorithm, which is something called Facebook Profit, for those who are more technical interested. And this was also built in 2 steps. So first step is history for all packages, the total amount of packages that came into the storage. So one model to train them, total amount of packages. Oh, there is a black slide here for some reason. Hold on. There we go. So first step, forecasting total amount of incoming packages. And then the second step is to, from using the forecasted total amount, forecast how many of those belongs to normal packages, frozen packages, and chemicals. And from there, we can once again combine the whole thing. Each Friday, you run the model on next week, and then first check the total amount of packages. Send that to the next 3 forecasting models, and then they forecast for each day how many normal packages, how many frozen packages, how many packages that contains chemicals. And that creates a report that the person in charge for doing the planning can have, can use to then actually plan how many people do we need for the different type of packages. So again, we go from someone working in Excel and barely do changes to a whole system where you each Friday just get a report and use that to decide how many people you need. So once again, it freed up time for the person taking care of planning. You cut the cost for external personnel, and we also the company, when started using this, they got less fines for handling packages. So you got a better workplace, but you also cut cost from doing forecasting, which is one kind of simple model. And the last one I'm going to talk about is predictive maintenance. So I'm going to talk about it within trucks. So modern trucks have hundreds of sensors that check status, different levels, and then they send that to the manufacturer. So they log how the truck is doing, if there is something that seems wrong. And the way it worked before is that, well, truck breaks down. There are some sensors that showed, okay, you need to go to a mechanic as soon as possible. But there are no sensors that says, okay, you need to go to a mechanic in 2 weeks because this part is about to break down. So the trucks just break down, and that creates a bad customer experience. And in some cases, trucks have a promised uptime. If they break down, the manufacturer have to pay the truck for standing still. So what we had, for example, is throttle that controls the gas. We have brakes, we have a battery, and we have AdBlue that decrease the emission from the truck. And if someone is an expert on truck and hear me say something that is a bit wrong, bear with me. Even though I've been working on this, I'm not an expert on trucks or vehicles at all. So by predicting that components are about to break down, a stop can be scheduled at the mechanic that align with the route of the truck, and the mechanic can also make sure they have the parts. Otherwise, they can say, no, we don't have the parts, so drive to another mechanic that is another 2 miles away or something. So how this worked is also, once again, there are a lot of different models, but they do the same thing. So we have the history for the trucks. We have error codes, we have dates, temperature, country that the truck is used, and then we have the date the component broke down, which is the interesting part that we want to predict. So what we did, we started with 3 different components: throttle, battery, and AdBlue. And for each of them, create a classification model. One that says if the component breaks down within 2 weeks, one class if it breaks down within 2 to 4 weeks, and class 3 is no breakdown, which also means there is no breakdowns within the upcoming 4 weeks. And for every single truck that has these sensors that send it to the manufacturer, we do a nightly report for every truck that then customer service can get, and then they get a notification of these are the trucks that you need to contact and see if they want to schedule a service time at a mechanic. So this was going from just letting trucks break down and handle it on the spot to creating a new business model. We can have a subscription of getting acknowledged when your truck needs service on a whole new level. You get a better customer experience because trucks just don't break down everywhere now. They can actually fix the problem before the problem exists. And you also get a better planning for the mechanics, since the mechanics then can see, okay, do we have time for trucks? Do we have parts, and so on? So, thank you for listening. This was quite fast going through 3 different tasks of 3 different AI solutions, but hopefully you can see how the same, or you can think about how the same type of solutions could fit in and at totally different places. I will also stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Robert.
Semi had it on time at least.
Yeah. We are flexible. we adjust. Really interesting presentation. Thank you very much. And I do love the impact that you actually brought that on at the end, the impact of AI use cases. That's really interesting. Now, I'm gonna share my screen, and it's time to now it's time to share ideas and insights based on both what you've heard and also your previous experience. I encourage you to stay in the discussion groups that we will have in the breakout rooms. It's usually quite insightful to hear everyone else's experience and thoughts on this topic. So now we will open up smaller breakout rooms, and you will be assigned automatically to a breakout room. And there we will also have facilitators from ABC that will help you both with questions and moderate the discussion. Worth mentioning, the breakout room session will not be recorded, so you can be as frank as you like. But I do encourage you to turn on your microphone and video to more fun to see people you talk to. We will be back at 1:45, so a little bit more than 10 minutes, and we will share in the main group and wrap up. Awesome, enjoy. Welcome back, everyone. We hope you had an interesting discussion and made new connections. And we would love to hear some voices. Would anyone want to share the insights and discussions you had in the breakout rooms? If so, please, unmute yourself. Go ahead.
So I'm Abhijit Lashkar. I can start my experience, quick experience of 5-10 minutes. Is that in my group, there are 3 other persons. One of them are coming from business directly, mostly real estate business. And he had some questions regarding how he can scale it up, and sometimes how he can handle if there is a problem of scaling of the package prototype, and how often he needs to do that. So that question he asked, and we had a very short time to discuss about that, but not, we would have loved to have more time to discuss about that. Yeah.
Of course, I understand. Interesting.
If I may suggest as well, if you would like to continue any of the conversations that you've had, there is a QR code behind me here. You can scan that, and it provides connection details for all of the facilitators. So if you'd like to get any more information, please do.
Great point. The discussion doesn't have to end here. We can connect on LinkedIn and in other ways and continue the discussion as well.
Yeah, and as you said, I don't think I said that in the beginning, but if someone wants to discuss this type of these areas, then of course reach out again. It's so much fun to discuss this in every single way.
Awesome. Anyone else who would like to share? Yes, we could.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for a great presentation, Robert. Well, we talked about in our group, we talked a little bit about kind of when is the time to implement an AI solution. So like in, for example, stores, when they try to predict demand, it's usually like you collect data in an Excel sheet, and then you kind of go based on your previous knowledge on how it usually is. Like when it's Christmas, people want to buy Christmas stuff and so on. And that kind of works, but I can imagine like when it expands and become bigger and bigger and more complex, and there is more kind of variables, AI is great. But how do you define when that is the time? Like when do you know you are mature enough to do this and take this take it to the next level, I would say. And that's a question for Robert mainly.
Yeah, and that is a hard one, I would say. But it's very hard to know like when you are mature. But I would say that one problem I think a lot of companies have when they want to start using AI is because, again, AI is hyped. When you realize you have a use case, you want it now, you don't want to wait for it. So what you kind of need to do, I would say, is to like build a lot from the ground up, to start like, okay, how do we even say data nowadays? Do we even do something with our data today? Like before you even go to have AI solution, okay, then you maybe need to start having automated reports to start somewhere and build up. I think AI Sweden has a kind of a staircase models, kind of, where you can see like how you should climb that to see the different levels you're on to make a proper transformation from going to start collecting data to be able to have proactive AI that you can use to actually make decisions on. And there you go from gather data, build proper data infrastructure so you can easily use it. The next step, create this kind of business intelligence report and do that to get more insights on what is happening, and then so on. So like it's hard to say like now you should do it, but it's more like be sure to build a good ground to start with, because then it's become so much easier during the way. Otherwise you often come to a place where you are close to create a solution that you want, but you have to go back so far because you realize, okay, we don't have the base in a proper way.
Yeah, thank you. I found the AI Sweden maturity assessment tool. So
yeah, that one is also very, very good to do as well for the whole company, just to see where are you, what you need to do to get further.
I will read it later. Thank you.
Makes sense. Good points. Anyone else would like to share?
Maybe we can share from the female group, as you mentioned just now, Ridi.
Yes.
So
go ahead and tell the discussion, because it was really interesting in a different angle altogether.
All right, thanks. I'll try to capture it. So what we talked about was Rocio here in the team as well, and what we talked about was basically our experiences. So I'm a consultant working primarily within AI use cases from finance and from automotive sector. So I really liked your presentation, Robert, and can kind of see myself there in the same situation in the data bakery type of sessions. It's not always easy, but always interesting. And then Rocio represents Happy Socks, works there. and she mentioned quite some interesting things around where does e-com kind of lean forward and what type of use cases are applicable there going forward. Super interesting. So I think we ran out of time a little bit, but brainstormed on how to tailor socks, etc. Do you want to add anything there, Rocio?
No, I think you summarized it very well. It was very, very insightful actually to do exchange cross industry too.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Bruna, raise your hand.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Well, in my group, I think we were reflecting about different themes, but there were two that I think caught my attention. The first one was this number that 40% of the AI companies don't use AI, and why companies do that, and maybe they think you are using it, but maybe it's not because they want to lie, maybe because they are wrong in the concept of AI. And also we were talking about the ethical part, that not only people are biased, but also machines, models are biased because of the data, because finally there is a person behind the data that is feeding the model. So like, I think it was like a reminder for everyone to don't forget that we can be biased, and the importance of having a diverse team to minimize the bias and the unintended consequences.
Wow, really interesting. Awesome.
I really like that you mentioned having a diverse team. When talking about ethics within AI, I think that is the one thing I try to point out the most, to have a diverse team. So very nice to hear.
Thank you. With that, we will move on. Awesome insights, and thank you for sharing. It would be great to discuss 1 hour more, but I think this is a really interesting topic, and we will come back to it. Now, shortly to finish up, if you want to know what's going on, you can follow us on LinkedIn, and I will post a QR code shortly. As mentioned, this was our third session in a series of 4 about AI checklist series. The next one will be about AI implementations and the challenges of implementing AI in businesses. Please do follow us on LinkedIn and our other on Instagram. I think we have a Facebook group as well to stay in touch. And if you scan the QR code, you will also find our LinkedIn, so you can connect and continue the discussion there. With that, I would like to thank Robert very much for coming here and sharing your experience and knowledge, and also the AI Think Tank crew and all the facilitators who made this event available and possible, as well as Hyper Island and AI Sweden, which are our partners. Now, shortly, quick checkout question right in the chat at your own speed. What is 1 or 2 things that you actually take with you from today's session? Can go whenever you want. We'll have nice. Yeah, that's it. Really interesting. AI maturity, 30% of AI companies not doing AI. Really great insights and things to carry with you forward. And remember, I will shortly use more in the future. Kind of a long sentence in one word. It's really great. So with that, I would like to thank everyone who attended. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Robert, and the Think Tank team. And we'll see you at the next event. Have a great Tuesday, everyone, and a great week. Bye-bye.